In Glen, 1965, the largest and fastest field in the Glen history, qualifying for the 5th race of the United States Road Racing Championship. Stopwatches click off fastest times ever for the 18th annual Watkins Glen Grand Prix. The record book was rewritten during qualification tests on this 2 3/10 miles course. But speed, performance, and the thrill of motor racing are nothing new to Watkins Glen. Modern American road racing was born here in 1948 when MGTCs, Alfa Romeos, and a host of pre-war cars charged through the village of Watkins Glen and up into the rolling countryside on a 6 6/10 miles journey. It was one of the severest tests in road racing. Watkins Glen attorney Cameron Argetsinger was the man behind that first race and drove in it. He talks about those early days and those early cars.
This is Stone Bridge on the original Watkins Glen circuit, where the sport of ours all began back in 1948. This Stone Bridge is typical of the original 6.6-mile circuit, which I think is a challenge to the driver, is equaled only by the legendary Nürburgring in Germany. That circuit began in the village of Watkins Glen, in front of the courthouse, came up over the hill, down across this bridge, up through the park, across a long, flat, slightly bent straightaway, across the railroad tracks where the New York Central stopped the trains, and back down into the village through a long, sweeping curve. It was genuine road racing in the classic tradition. The cars in those days ranged in horsepower from about 240 to 340. As race-winning cars have always been, they were meticulously prepared, down to the very last safety wire.
The Chaparral represents the latest evolution of the race car. Weight 1,200 pounds, Chevy engine, automatic transmission, plastic body. Named for a very swift Texas bird and regularly shows its tail feathers to the competition. National Speed Sport News editor Chris Economaki talks with the Chaparral's designer, builder, and driver, Jim Hall.
Well, I think motor racing has got a lot more sophisticated since 1948, or when it started here, Chris. There's been a lot of work done on chassis, on transmissions, on brakes, on tires. I think the whole thing has made a lot of improvement in that much time.
What are the significant points of improvement in chassis design in recent years?
Well, basically, I think everybody's gone to a rear weight bias. That is more weight on the rear wheels than on the front, and independent suspension so that the car actually sticks to the road better with the bumps and so forth.
We hear the term handling being used by racing people. What does handling mean to you?
Well, handling to me means subjectively the feel of the car. In other words, how does it feel to the driver? Does it feel secure? Does it handle with neutral around the turns, or tail out, or nose out, or however it feels to the driver? That's what handling means to me, as opposed to the objective or cornering speed, say. In other words, a car could handle well and not corner very fast, but what you'd like is a combination of high cornering speed and good handling so that it does feel secure to the driver.
We noticed it on the Chaparrals. At each race, they look just a little bit different. Now we see they have spoilers on the front end of the cars. Is this to give you more speed or to overcome a problem you had last time out?
Well, as you know, racing is continuous development. We make improvements as we go along in any area, actually, and this is to cure a problem with the car at extremely high speed. With these lightweight cars, we've always had some lifting problem, and we are continually developing or continually working at body design and spoilers which will kill this lift.
Now ride with Hall as he describes the car and the track.
Okay, this is up over the hill. This is about 100 mile an hour, essentially. The car gets light as you top this hill. Of course, going onto the back straightaway, we'll reach approximately 160 miles an hour here. You notice the course is pretty rough, and the suspension of the car has to be working right all the time, otherwise it gets to darting around on the straightaway. This takes a lot of brakes going into the chicane the way they've got it worked now. You got to make this right-hander at about 45 or so, and brakes take a pretty severe beating here. Of course, the car has to handle on both slow and fast turns. Notice the dip as you go into back onto the straightaway from the chicane. There, that'll bottom the suspension out if you don't have enough travel there. Down into the back onto the chute. You get a lot of G's there. The car comes up over this hill, and if you'll notice the back straightaway here in the with this left-hand turn, it's very rough. The car's got to handle extremely well around this turn. To the fast right-hander. This is another about 100-mile-an-hour turn to the right. Notice the car won't have much slip angle. It tracks right through there, just the way it's supposed to. Use all the road, and on back towards the hairpin leading on to the straightaway. Now, this is another severe place on braking. It's a real sharp right-hander, about 20 miles an hour, I'd say, and back to a slow turn, and then accelerate. Up into the right-hander, leading on to the course again.
Now, the USRRC, as it was known, featured cars with under 2-liter and over 2-liter engines racing in separate classes. But each class got separate points toward the championship. Engine size is the subject of Chris Economaki's discussions with Cobra driver Bob Johnson.
What about this big engine business? Years ago, to go fast, you built a bigger engine. But you do more than that now, don't you?
Well, the secret is getting the power to the ground. You can have all the horsepower in the world, but if you can't get it to the ground, you might as well have a mini minor engine in your car.
Californian Don Wester driving a Ford-powered Genie Mark 10.
I'm not sure whether the biggest engines really win the races anymore. I think it's a combination of everything, the handling and even the automatic transmission and everything.
Handling is even more important for the smaller engine cars. Unable to compete in the horsepower race, they must make up for it by perfect handling and maneuverability. The advanced design concepts have proved their worth. Small cars are running first and third in the standings going into this race. Elva BMW pilot Chuck Dietrich outlines the importance of handling.
Is the handling qualities of a car as important to an under 2-liter driver as it is to an over 2-liter driver?
More.
Why do you say that?
Because we don't have the speed on the straight, so we have to go faster through the corners. I would say, with the exception of the Chaparrals, we're probably much faster through the corners than the majority of the big engine cars here. I know I can outbrake. In fact, I outbraked several and misjudged and went off the road at the chicane.
No one proves the point better than Californian George Fulmer, whose classy Lotus Porsche has helped Fulmer maintain a 5-point lead over Jim Hall in the championship standings. And Fulmer works at it.
Well, Chris, we try to set the car for each course. We have adjustments in the camber and the rear end. We have adjustments on shock. Example, on this course at Watkins Glen here, we've made some changes in our sway bars tension. I mean, just little things like this that we run into it at each course to make the car try and handle a little bit better, feel a little better stable, and we've got it narrowed down to kind of a pet few, and it seems to work pretty well.
We hear the term handling being used all the time by drivers. What does it mean to you to have a car handle well?
Well, a good handling car is one you can go fast in.
Go fast is the name of the game. But this year's rules make having a chance to win a little more difficult. The largest field of entrants in the Glen's history forces qualification runs to select the starting 30. The times are phenomenal. Jim Hall cracked all records, his own from last year included, and posts a 1 minute 16.5 seconds. Better than 108 miles an hour average on this twisty 2.3-mile course. Qualifying's over. The battle lines are drawn. The 30 fastest are called to the assembly area. It's race day. Only one chaparral appears, and Hall looks worried. There may be trouble with a second chaparral. They're called down to the starting grid. In a moment, the race. Grid at Watkins Glen. 30 starters assemble according to their qualification times, and the drivers take their places. The last quiet moments before the start. Jim Hall and Hap Sharp have switched cars. Sharp relinquishing his to Hall when a gas leak developed in Hall's number 66. And now they work on Sharp's car. A few good raps on the carburetor solves the problem. And both chaparrals are ready. Starter Tex Hopkins signals, rev them up. Here's how they line up. On the front row, Jim Hall and Hap Sharp in chaparral. Next, Don Wester and Rick Muther. Third row, Buck Fulp and Mike Hall. Then George Winterstein and Ludwig Heimroth. And 22 eager racers behind them. Tex signals all ready. Seconds now to the flag. Chaparrals lead the pack uphill and into the S's with Wester's Genie Ford sandwiched right in there and Rick Muther running fourth. And there's plenty of jockeying going on back in the pack as they crest the hill. This is when the traffic is the thickest, the going roughest. Into the demanding hard right of the chicane, Hall sits first. Sharp right behind, followed by Wester, Muther, and 24 hopefuls. Handling's the story through here. The better, the faster. Hall uses the straight to stretch his lead. Sharp's an easy second, followed by Wester and Muther. And that's the way they head into the pit straight to complete lap one. The chaparrals wasting no time putting daylight in back of them. No clear-cut gains by anyone else yet. Still plenty of maneuvering. Tricky chicane, the chaparrals look like they're on rails. Wester, Muther, and Fulp follow in that order behind the chaparrals. Sharp's car seems to be trouble-free despite the last-minute repairs to the fuel tank. Stays easily ahead of Californian Don Wester and closes on his teammate Hall as they sail past the pit and uphill again. Don Wester has pitted. Wester running third is in with only a few laps gone. This will cost the Californian dearly. Looks like distributor trouble for Wester's Ford-powered Genie Mark 10. And Doug Revson has trouble. Lotus is off the road at the top of the hill just after the pit straight, but looks like he'll get back in the race. Meantime, Hall and Sharp are strengthening their lead. And Rick Muther's number 24 Lola T70 takes over third from Wester. The chaparrals have no trouble pulling away from Muther as they scream down the back straight.
Cars in this race, and these 10 are all running nose to tail. 11 if we count the guy who's hung out there in left field. But his problem is minor. Les Kiter says some other guys are really in trouble.
There's smoke coming from Buck Fulp's Lola T70, and that may be trouble for Fulp. The Anderson, South Carolina driver is in fourth place behind Rick Muther in the only Lola in the race. But he's slowed somewhat now, and it looks like Fulp has problems. And here's trouble. Don Wester is skidded on the gravel at the top of the hill past the pit straight. He's landed in the hay bales. And he looks to be okay. Wester has had difficulties getting his Genie Mark 10 to handle just the way he wanted, and said before the race he was happy with it today. He qualified 2 seconds behind Hap Sharp. But this spectacular accident will end things for the likable Californian who has not been able to finish a race yet at the Glen. And that's it for Rick Muther. An oil leak sends Muther's Lola to the paddock, and suddenly the attrition rate has zoomed. That gives Augie Pabst in one of Hall's original chaparrals a chance to cover some ground. And at the halfway point has moved from his 20th spot at the start to 5th position. In fourth, after a careful but well-paced drive, is George Fulmer in his very quick, very dependable Lotus Fortune. third, the 427 Cobra of Skip Scott. The young Villanova, Pennsylvania driver has his hands full with the giant 427 engine in that Cobra, but he's handling it nicely on this twisty course. Handling just as nicely and with no trouble, staying far in front, the twin chaparrals of Ball and Sharp. They've passed the entire field now and are lapping consistently at just over 98 miles per hour average, well beneath what they're capable of. All content to save the car as well as the lead. Competition in the under 2-liter class has never materialized, and the current point leader in his number 16 Lotus Porsche seems sure to pick up another 9 points for this race. Joe Buzetta's Elva Porsche number 3, a car he's been able to keep up with Fulmer in before, isn't cooking right today. Buzetta is 4 places down to Fulmer. Meantime, Fulmer's only other competition, Jerry Brule, driving a Climax-powered Lotus, is behind Buzetta. Brule currently stands third in championship points, behind Fulmer and Hall. And now Buzetta pits. Valve trouble for the Elva Porsche, and this eliminates any chance Buzetta had of catching Fulmer, even though he'll get back to the race. Bob Johnson in a standard Cobra leads the manufacturer's division. He's had no trouble in that category. The only other entrant, another Cobra driven by Tom Payne. But Augie Pabst has given Johnson a race all day for 5th spot, and the two of them have provided real excitement back in the pack. Only laps to go now, and Skip Scott comes in for gas. This could cost him 3rd place if Fulmer can get by while Scott's still in the pit. But he's gassed. Gets the green and goes. And just in time as Fulmer comes down the pit straight. It's been another phenomenal performance for the Chaparrals. They've had no trouble all day. The Texas Roadrunners have averaged between 98 and just over 99 miles an hour. They hold a 3-lap advantage on everyone in the field as Tex Hopkins signals 1 lap to go. Skip Scott's gigantic engine is enough to hold off Fulmer for the remaining lap. Fulmer has done a great job in his nimble Lotus Porsche. And Pabst has gotten by Johnson right at the end to take over 5th place overall. Tex Hopkins readies the flag and shows Hall and Sharp the victory checker for a fine race, although a relatively easy victory. Sharp dice playfully on the victory lap as they accept salutes from the crowd of 25,000 for proving again the mastery of the Chaparral in one of the team's most convincing victories. The rest of the field takes the checker from starter Hopkins. And now Hall pulls up to accept the symbol of his victory and 9 more points toward the championship. In a moment, words with a winner. For the 4th time this year in the Road Racing Series, Jim Hall puts his Chaparral into the victory circle. A laurel garland and some of the locally produced champagne, plus 9 more points toward the championship. Reward a happy Jim Hall. Chris Economaki gets the winner's report.
What happened right before the start when you made the switch in cars?
Well, we had some fuel tank trouble with number 66. We weren't quite sure we had a full load in it, so I have to here take mine.
How about, did you extend the car at all during the day?
Well, you know, it's racing. You got to get out there and go.
How about the track? We noticed a couple of cars slipping and sliding off. Did you encounter any trouble in that regard?
I got off early there for a while. There was a real slick spot. In fact, I think the car must have gone all the way around the track, but it dried up pretty quick and was okay.
How about the curbings on the course, Jim? Were they of any bother to you?
Well, I stayed away from them.
Paul's first overall keeps the championship race an interesting one. He's still 5 points behind Lotus Porsche driver George Fulmer, who finished 4th overall today, but first under 2 liters. Under championship rules, over and under 2-liter cars receive equal points per win. So Fulmer, if he keeps winning, can take the championship, even though Hall has more first overalls. Fulmer's determined.
Well, we're going to keep him honest and keep trying. We've got 3 more to go, and we'll be there. We're going to try to win it. It's a real honor. Competitively to Jim Hall, of course, there isn't much, but I think we can run it and finish if we're ready for it. With this engine, it hasn't let us down yet, so it should be in there all the way.
First in the manufacturer's division, Cobra pilot Bob Johnson, who brought his Cobra GT in 6th overall. In all, 17 of the 30 starters finished the race. Hall's average speed was just under 100 miles per hour. He and teammate Sharp had 3 laps on the closest competitor.